3 bone-chilling Airbnb horror stories you never knew could happen to you at midnight. As the clock struck midnight, darkness draped over the small town of Maple Creek. Airbnb seemed like the perfect getaway, but there was a darkness lurking just beneath the surface. Imagine rolling up to a quaint little cabin, laughter ringing in your ears, only to feel a sudden chill creeping down your spine. The air grows heavy. Shadows whisper. You're not alone. You never were. The first strange encounter happened to Sarah and Drew. They had booked a picturesque lake house, its charm irresistible. As they unloaded their bags, a sudden cold breeze swept through the porch. Sarah shrugged it off, but Drew's eyes widened. In the air, they swore they heard a child's giggle, echoing eerily from the woods. Just the wind, Sarah laughed, but deep down, uncertainty gnawed at her. That night, they settled into bed, only to be jolted awake by loud thuds outside. The kind that makes your heart race and sends a lump straight to your throat. Sarah peeked through the window, and her breath hitched. The silhouette of a child stood in the moonlight, staring blankly at the house, grinning. Next up, we dive into the harrowing tale of Jenna, who booked a rustic cottage. The owner was unusually secretive, warning her to keep doors locked tight. "It's just for safety," he said with a nervous smile. But the moment Jenna entered, something felt off. The wallpaper peeled back, revealing what looked like old, faded photos hidden behind it. Close-ups of past guests, none of whom seemed particularly happy. Every time Jenna turned her back, she felt a presence, something watching her, lurking in the shadows, trailing her footsteps. When she finally dared to explore the basement, she gasped. Old toys, forgotten and dusty, lay beside a strange, broken mirror. Suddenly, the reflection revealed a pale figure standing behind her, a glimpse that vanished instantly, leaving Jenna's heart hammering against her chest. Just when you think it can't get any worse, the last story wraps it all up with a terrifying twist. Tommy and Rachel rented a chic loft in the city. It was all smooth sailing until Rachel noticed fingerprints on the balcony door, muddy, small handprints. "We didn't even open that door," she whispered, fear slicing through her voice. Late that night, they were startled awake to the sound of glass shattering. Tommy bolted upright, eyes wild. They searched the entire apartment, only to find an old teddy bear sitting on the couch, one they had never owned. Beneath it was a note, scribbled frantically, "You shouldn't have come here." Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But just when you think these stories have reached their climax, imagine waking up to find your own belongings have been moved, or worse, missing altogether. As the sun rises, the shadows retreat, leaving you with the looming question, what really happened during those sleepless nights? And what if it's not over yet? A new day dawned in Maple Creek, but the remnants of the night hung heavy. Sarah and Drew, visibly rattled from their encounter, decided to stay just one more night. Drew insisted it was the best way to confront their fears. They had driven hours to reach the lake house, and he wouldn't let a shadow scare them away. Shrugging off her anxieties, Sarah reluctantly agreed. After all, nothing could happen in broad daylight. As they settled into a shaky routine, veils of normalcy began to obscure their dread. They spent the morning fishing by the lake, the gentle lapping of water soothing their frayed nerves. But something gnawed at Sarah. She frequently glanced back toward the house, expecting to see that haunting figure in the distance. It never appeared again, but wordless panic filled the air, a silent threat that hung between them. That afternoon, they hosted a barbecue, desperately trying to rekindle laughter and warmth. Friends from nearby towns joined, but with every passing hour, an unshakable apprehension crept in. As twilight stretched its fingers over the horizon, a low howling echoed through the trees. Drew, quick to dismiss it as an animal, chuckled nervously. But Sarah felt frozen, a deep chill racing through her like icy tendrils. Later, as dusk settled, they huddled around the fire, shadows dancing ominously. They shared stories to keep fear at bay, yet her heart remained uncannily aware. That's when the giggling returned louder now, a cacophony that twisted through the trees. Friends exchanged nervous glances, laughter fading to whispers. The air turned thick with a sense of dread as shadows deepened. "Did you hear that?" one of their friends whispered, the color draining from her face. "I think it's just kids playing," Drew offered, but even he struggled to maintain his bravado. As the warmth from the fire began to flicker, the innocent giggles twisted into sinister shrieks. Sarah's eyes widened, locked on the tree line. "It's coming from the woods." She gasped, breath hitching in her throat. Suddenly, a rustling noise erupted near the cabin. Drew jumped to his feet, peering into the darkness. "Let's check it out," he urged. The bravado from earlier had all but dissolved. Reluctantly, Sarah followed, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. As they neared the porch, the giggling escalated, morphing into a cacophony of childlike laughter that echoed eerily in the cooling air. They stepped cautiously, heartbeats racing and minds swimming with dread, every step heavy with uncertainty, and then they saw it, a little girl, not much older than 6, standing alone beneath the tree. Her feet bare, hair disheveled, and eyes wide but devoid of any warmth. Instead of joy, her expression was unsettling, a quiet malevolence creeping across her features as she pointed back into the trees. "Will you play with me?" she called sweetly, yet the ice in her voice froze them in place. Was it the spirit of the child they had seen before? Drew shook his head. "This isn't right, we need to go inside." But Sarah was entranced, creeping closer. What was it about that little girl? Her laughter echoed, reverberating against the backdrop of encroaching darkness. Then, without warning, the girl's expression morphed, her mouth twisted into a sinister grin, and she motioned once more to the trees before vanishing into thin air. A shriek erupted from the cabin. It was their friend, clutching a diary. "Look at this!" she screamed, flipping through pages fast. "It's a guest book. They all wrote their last words before disappearing." Her hands trembled, and Sarah's heart sank. The dread they'd dismissed was now becoming all too real. Just then, the heavy shutters of the cabin slammed shut on their own, the door rattling violently as if pushed by an unseen force. Shadows filled the space with malevolence, whispers circling around them like wolves. With wide eyes, they faced each other, the walls shifting, the air closing in, and just when they thought they could make sense of it all, whispers flooded their ears, chilling them deeper. "You should have never come here." What awaited them behind those shadows? Would they find a way to escape, or were they forever bound to succumb to the cabin's dark history? The cabin trembled as whispers slithered through the air, curling around their ankles like bony fingers. Sarah felt an overwhelming wave of nausea wash over her, squeezing her stomach tighter with every passing second. Each breath tasted stale, thick with fear. The flickering lights cast distorted shadows on the walls, stretching and twisting like tortured souls. "Get a grip, Sarah," she whispered to herself, shaking her head to clear the haze, but the grip of dread had tightened its hold. Drew stepped forward, his eyes darting from face to face, searching for reassurance that no one had vanished just yet. "Everyone, stay close," he urged, trying to sound brave. "Let's just stay together." But even his voice trembled as he spoke, faltering under the weight of unshakable fear. They huddled together, a circle of 4 against the overwhelming unknown. The diary lay open, pages fluttering eerily in an invisible breeze, and every glance at the hastily scrawled last words felt like a punch to Sarah's gut. No, please don't do this," she begged, her voice barely a whisper. Just then, the haunted giggling returned, echoing from the depths of the night. A cold sweat broke out across Sarah's back. The sound danced around them, darting in and out like a malicious spirit playing hide and seek. As it grew closer, a heavy silence blanketed the room, then snapped back to chaos as their friend dropped the diary, her eyes wide with terror. He is missing. She gasped, collapsing to the floor. It took a moment for Sarah to comprehend. What do you mean? Who is missing? Marty. He's gone. Panic surged through the group as the weight of reality crashed down on them. This wasn't just a horror story, it was their horrifying reality. They shouldn't have brushed off their feelings. They should have left. Where south the last place you saw him? Drew demanded, his chest tight. I don't know. I thought he was right behind me. She cried, scrambling to her feet. In that moment, the shadows around them shifted again. They could feel a consuming darkness, something more than just fear taking root within the walls. Let us split up, we'll find him faster that way. Drew proposed, but Sarah's heart sank. In horror movies, that plan never worked. No. We stick together. She practically shouted, battling the urge to scream. The shadows were closing in, and the air felt too thick to breathe. Then, without warning, the light sputtered and died. In an eerie darkness, the fire cast mere sparks, illuminating only their terrified faces. The giggles transformed into a full chorus, reverberating around them, seeping deeper into her soul. Please make it stop. Sarah cried out, her voice breaking. Suddenly, a hand grasped her arm, and she spun around, heart racing to her throat. But it was only Drew, his face pale and eyes wide with terror. Did you feel that? He whispered. Before she could answer, the cabin creaked, wood moaning like a wounded beast. The door swung open just a crack, revealing a sliver of moonlight. A shadow darted outside, small and fast. Marty! They shouted in unison, racing across the floor, scrambling to the door. But as they tugged it open, the night smothered them with its black cloak. The woods were alive, rustling ominously as more whispers filled the spaces between trees. The echo of childlike laughter bounced off the trunks and rustled the leaves. Where are you? Drew yelled into the abyss, but the woods swallowed his voice whole. Something caught Sarah's eye, a shimmer in the distance, a flicker of movement. What was that? She pointed, her voice cracking. Without a word, they began to move toward it, their hearts pounding in sync, fear cascading around them. Step by step, they entered a world darker than they had ever imagined, the shadows drawn tight, each twist of the branches a warning. And then they heard it, a blood-curdling scream cutting through the night, echoing in stark clarity, shattering the fragile thread of their sanity. Sarah's heart stopped as she turned to face Drew. What in God's name was that? The answer fell heavy, as an icy wind ripped through them, chilling their souls. There was no turning back now. What waited for them in the shadowy woods? Would they bind together to uncover the truth, or become just another whisper in the dark? The moon hung low, a ghostly orb casting an eerie glow over the woods. Every step Sarah took crunched beneath her feet, an unsettling reminder that they were completely alone. Shadows danced on the periphery, teasing with movement that her instincts screamed to ignore, yet she couldn't look away. Did you hear that? Drew's voice trembled as he gripped her arm tighter. The resonance of a distant thump echoed on the wind, shattering the silence surrounding them. It was a rhythmic pounding, almost like something or someone was thrashing against tree trunks. Maybe it's Marty, Sarah replied, forcing her voice to stay steady. Deep down, she knew it couldn't be. The laughter crept through her mind, taunting her resolve. The forest felt alive, vibrating with a dark energy that set her skin to crawling. They pressed on, heartbeats racing, every whispered breath urging them forward. The flicker in the distance grew closer, morphing into the shape of a figure. Marty! Sarah shouted, her throat tightening around the name, hope flickering alongside fear. But as the figure darted between the trees, it was cloaked in shadows, impossible to decipher. "Wait, don't chase it." Drew pulled at her sleeve, desperation in his eyes. "It could be dangerous." "I don't care," she snapped back, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Panic had blurred their thoughts, and she could only see the dim outline of Marty as he slipped further away. "We can't leave him." But as she lunged into the darkness, the laughter erupted again, shrill and mocking, ricocheting among the trees. It was as if the woods themselves were alive, pulling her further from safety. The distant thump turned into a deafening cacophony, branches cracked and twigs splintered beneath unseen weight. Against her better judgment, Sarah pressed onward. She broke through a thicket, stumbling into a small clearing. The air felt thick, oppressive, and a chill wrapped around her like icy chains. "Marty," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. Then she saw him. He stood there, back turned, disheveled and trembling. "Marty!" Her heart leapt as she took a step toward him. "Don't," Drew hissed, urgency clawing at his tone. "Something's not right." With each step closer, dread clawed at her throat. When Marty finally turned, Sarah's joy froze. His eyes were wide, dilated, looking through her rather than at her. He opened his mouth to speak, but his words morphed into a choking gasp, as if he were trapped in a nightmare. "What happened?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Marty, talk to me." Drew took a tentative step forward, his usual bravery slipping that it was then that they noticed it. In the shadows beyond the clearing stood figures, twisted silhouettes, humanoid but distorted, moving in erratic bursts, their limbs bending at unnatural angles. They echoed the grotesque cries of frightened children mixed with something far more sinister. "Run!" Sarah screamed, panic igniting within her. But before they could turn back, one of the figures lunged, phasing into reality a ghastly shape, its mouth agape with an otherworldly screech that ricocheted in their skulls. The air thickened, pressing down on them as fear blazed like a wildfire. Drew grabbed Sarah's arm, yanking her away. But it was too late. The figures advanced with unyielding speed, their laughter layered with anguish. The woods began to close in, trees warping around them, whispering secrets meant only for the lost. Their laughs combined with the chilling wind grew louder, drowning out reason. Sarah stumbled but caught herself, the sight of the approaching nightmares freezing her in place. Just when she thought the shadows would engulf her, the ground beneath them shifted as the entire forest seemed to pulsate. In that moment, she glimpsed something, an ancient symbol carved into a nearby tree, glowing faintly within the dark. It felt familiar, yet foreign, filled with echoes of past lives entwined with their fate. "Marty!" she shouted, urging him to look. "We can't stay here." But before he could respond, a deafening silence enveloped them, crushing their cries. They turned, but the figures had vanished, leaving only the mocking laughter lingering in the damp air. The weight of uncertainty hung between them, thicker than the fog that rolled in around their feet. Where had they gone? Suddenly, the ground trembled again, and the trees creaked ominously, and Sarah could feel the forest shifting, bending to an unseen will. "What now?" Drew whispered, the word barely escaping his lips. But even as Sarah opened her mouth to answer, yet another blood-curdling scream echoed through the branches, one that didn't belong to any of them. And in that moment, a realization hit her, so chilling it felt like icy fingers tracing her spine. This was more than just a fight for survival. Something far darker had awoken, and its appetite was relentless. What had they unleashed in the woods, and could they escape before it claimed them all? The air crackled like static as silence enveloped the clearing. Each breath felt heavy with dread, the oppressive weight of the woods pressing down on her chest. Sarah glanced at Drew, his face pale, eyes wide with fear. They were no longer just lost in the woods, they were entangled in something otherworldly. "Marty?" she called again, her voice trembling. But he didn't respond. Instead, he stood like a statue, trapped in whatever trance gripped him. The woods felt alive, pulsating around them, shifting shadows whispering secrets that clawed at the edges of her sanity. "Let us get out of here." Drew's eyes darted around, searching for an escape. But the laughter still echoed, icy fingers wrapping around their hearts. It was a cruel lullaby, a warning layered in terror. Before Sarah could object, Drew tugged her arm, pulling her toward the edge of the clearing. She glanced back at Marty, his figure swallowing in shadows. She felt a pang of helplessness, but the urgency of their escape outweighed her hesitation. "Is he?" Drew started, but Sarah pressed her finger to her lips, urging him to remain quiet. The air was thick with an awful tension, and she could hardly hear above the pounding of her own heart. They crept through the underbrush, the stickiness of soil clinging to their shoes. The wind whispered dreadfully, and the once familiar path had vanished, replaced by winding trails that twisted and turned into deeper darkness. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the forest sought to pull them back into its nightmarish grasp. Then, a hushed sob broke the silence, high-pitched, quivering. It echoed through the trees, pulling at something deep inside her. "Did you hear that?" Drew whispered, his eyes wide with uncertainty. Sarah nodded, fear prickling her skin. It sounded like a child. Her voice trailed off, swallowed by another shriek that slashed through the night. "Do we check it out?" he asked, but uncertainty settled between them like fog. Was it a trap? They couldn't know, but the sound tugged at her, warm and inviting yet ice-cold at the same time. "No." She shook her head, stepping backward. "We need to keep moving." But despite her conviction, an impulse erupted from deep within, an urge to help that battled against the gnawing caution. As they resumed their hurried escape, the laughter returned, echoing through the labyrinth of trees, mocking their every step. They pushed forward until they stumbled upon an old cabin, gray and broken, standing defiantly among the chaos. Its door hung ajar, creaking ominously in the wind. "Should we go in?" Drew asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. "No way. It'll be a dead end," Sarah shot back, but the sight of the cabin sparked a new form of curiosity, the feeling that whatever was happening in these woods originated within those decaying walls. "We can look just for a second, for clues," Drew suggested, his voice laced with determination. With reluctance, Sarah followed him inside, the doorway coughing dust into the air. The scent of damp wood and decay met them. Each creak of the floor added to the heavy silence, making them feel like intruders in a hidden world. They scanned the room, a dingy table, a broken chair, and something sinister hidden in the corner. A mirror cracked and eerie, dim light reflecting what little they had. "Look," Drew pointed, his finger shaking. Inside the shattered glass, shadows shifted. Faces twisted in agony flickered briefly before wrenching away. "Get away from that," Sarah hissed, stepping back. But the moment she turned, she saw a flicker in the corner of her eye, something moving behind them. The disembodied laughter burst forth once more, saturating the small space with an unbearable dread. "What was that?" Drew asked, the color draining from his face. Before Sarah could respond, the cabin door slammed shut. The laughter grew louder, now mixed with the haunting sobs of the unseen child. Trapped. They were trapped inside, and the shadows were closing in. As panic began to bubble up, Sarah reached for the nearest object, a rusted knife on the table, and clutched it tightly in her hands. In that moment, she understood. They weren't just fleeing from the forest, they had awakened something that would do anything to keep them. "What's happening?" Drew stammered, eyes darting wildly. This wasn't a game. This was survival. They could hear it, the heartbeat of the forest closing in, the whispers growing louder, more frenzied. "What is it saying?" Sarah murmured, fighting against the encroaching dread, but before they could piece together the meaning, the laughter morphed into a guttural growl, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. Shadows started to swirl, morphing into the forms they had glimpsed before, closing in as the room grew darker. The weight of horror clung to them, and suddenly, a chilling realization, sharper than ever, struck her cold. There was nowhere to run, what if the darkness didn't want them to escape? What if it wanted them to stay forever? With a fierce determination, she brandished the knife, prepared to face whatever terror awaited them. But as she stepped forward, the ground trembled once more. Behind them, a low rumble built into a roar, shaking the cabin's very foundation, and the laughter crescendoed into a fever pitch, and within the chaos, a voice broke through, a child's voice, now clearer than before. "Help me!" It echoed like a bell ringing, resonating through the very marrow of her bones. Sarah's heart raced. The forest had a secret, and now, it was more desperate than ever to be unleashed. What would it cost them to uncover it? Drew's eyes widened, and he took a step back, bumping against the cabin's shuddering wall. The voice lingered like a ghost, penitent yet pleading, pulling at the frayed edges of their sanity. "What do we do?" he croaked, voice thick with panic. The knife felt heavy in Sarah's hand, a flimsy lifeline against the darkness creeping closer. "We can't leave without knowing what it wants." Her voice was more defiant than she felt, but deep down, something within her thrummed with a sense of purpose, a responsibility to this trapped soul echoing in the night. "Are you out of your mind?" Drew hissed, casting nervous glances toward the corners of the room where shadows twisted in unnatural shapes. When had they stopped being shadows and started being something more? Something threatening? Someone's in trouble. Her words spilled forth, blurring the line between courage and recklessness. Every instinct told her to flee, but another part pulled her toward the voice, the part that couldn't ignore a cry for help. Suddenly, the atmosphere thickened, constricting around them. The walls of the cabin moaned, groaning like a wounded beast, as invisible hands seemed to press against their chests. The shadows warped, leaching color from the dim surroundings, curling like smoke toward the flickering light. "I don't like this." Drew's voice cracked in sheer terror. "We can't stay here." "You heard the laughter. It's not human." The howl of the wind outside matched the rising panic in Sarah. "We have to find out what it wants." She knew she sounded desperate, but the child's voice tugged firmly at her heart. "Fine," Drew growled, resigned. "But if this goes south, I'm not responsible for what happens next." He swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling heavily between them. Taking a deep breath, they moved toward the mirror standing ominously in the corner, shards reflecting fractured light like a broken promise. "Maybe the answer is in there," Sarah said softly, her eyes locked onto Drew's. "It has to be." As they drew closer, the surface of the mirror rippled, almost alive under their gaze. More faces appeared, distorted and pleading, stretching mouths forming voiceless screams, trapped behind glass. Sarah's heart raced as dread blanketed her like a heavy fog, sweat glistening on her brow. "We're not safe," Drew muttered, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting the shadows to leap at them. "Look!" Sarah gasped, pointing at a swirl of smoky shapes that coalesced into something resembling the figure of a child standing alone, eyes wide with a mixture of sorrow and fear. Soft strands of hair floated about, defying gravity, with tiny hands reaching out toward them. "Help me please." The child's voice blended with the laughter, now a cacophony of despair. "Get away!" Drew shouted, stepping back, hands raised defensively. "We can't trust it." But it was too late. Sarah felt the pull, an undeniable need to reach out, to acknowledge the child's fear. Just as the urge became overwhelming, the shadows slithered closer, flickering around their ankles like icy tendrils of mist. "Stop!" she shouted, and to her surprise, the shadows hesitated, their movements stilled by the sudden intensity of her voice. "Help me!" The child's plea was unwavering, a bone-chilling echo that thrummed through the air like a string plucked taut. Sarah could feel the urge to turn away, to save herself from whatever dreadful fate awaited, but the sight of those pleading eyes caught her. With a shaky breath, she raised the knife, her hands trembling. "What do you want?" she demanded into the void, her heart racing. "What do you need?" A thunderous silence enveloped them, the laughter fading into a chilling hush. Then, as if the air had suddenly thickened, a dark figure emerged from the shadows, an all-consuming presence. Its form was twisting, shifting like smoke, eyes glowing in the gloom, piercing, unyielding. It moved with an inevitable purpose, a looming promise of dread. The child's image faded and was replaced by a gaping void where nothing existed. It was a desperation so vast, it could swallow their very souls. What have we done? Drew's voice cracked with realization, and they both understood that the darkness was threatening them. It wanted their choice. Sarah felt a lump in her throat as old memories surfaced, lost friendships, family cracks, fears left unspoken. The child was a mere echo, but the looming presence that was real. It demanded admiration, forced confrontation. What do we do? Drew was shaking, the question underlying a chilling accuracy. Tension crackled in the air. The choice lay heavy between them. They could either step toward the child's frozen plea, or surrender to the shadows and forever silence its echo, but every choice comes with a price. As the shadows encroached, suffocating her sense of reason, she realized there was no turning back. Just then, a shriek punctured the silence, a sound so raw it cleaved through her resolve, and she felt the knife slip from her fingers. The child's cry crescendoed, blending into the shadows, "Help me, Sarah!" Drew screamed, fear alive in his voice as he reached for her, but it was too late. The shadows pulled her in, wrapping around her, drowning her in an ocean of dark, holding her fast. And that when it hit her, was this a rescue, or did they just become part of the darkness? What did they truly awaken in the heart of these woods? There were no answers, only more questions as the pressure of the forest bore down harder. How far could they go before the shadows sealed their fate forever? Everything spiraled as they faced the darkness head-on, knowing something within them was about to break. Maybe it was their very souls. Could they escape before becoming part of the echoing cries in the night? The pull of the shadows tightened, squeezing the breath from Sarah's chest. She felt them knotting around her limbs, viscous and unwelcome, dragging her deeper into the night's grasp. Panic surged through her veins, fueling her struggle, but the darkness was relentless. "Drew!" she gasped, her voice lost in a suffocating whirlpool of despair. Time stretched, every second a dagger to her heart, as she fought to reach him, to break free from the icy fingers that clawed at her skin. "Hold on!" Drew cried, moments away from following her into the void. With desperation painted across his face, he lunged toward her, fingertips brushing against her wrist, but the shadows were quicker, yanking her away. In that fleeting instant, it felt as if an eternity had passed, full of memories soaring through her mind, laughter around campfires, tiny whispers blown through autumn leaves, a warm embrace that promised safety. Those echoes vanished as the darkness consumed her, soaking her memories in its cold embrace. Just when Sarah thought she would drown, a flicker ignited in the depths of the gloom. The flickering outline of the child's figure emerged once again. "Help me!" the voice cried, still same yet charged with urgency, desperation spilling from its small frame. The shadows quivered in response, as if recognizing a stronger wish. In that moment, something shifted deep within Sarah. She could feel the child's pain mirror her own. Did they share the same struggle? She held on to that thought, clinging like a lifeline. "Why?" she shouted at the darkness that had ensnared her. "Why are you doing this?" The response thundered back, an unholy symphony of voices layered into one, growling, shrieking, and then, sweetly whispering. "Because you summoned it." The weight of those words struck Sarah like a physical blow, and adrenaline shot through her, igniting a fierce defiance. "No!" she screamed, urgency igniting within her soul. She was aware of the appalling choices stacking up, the decisions these shadows offered her. Behind every whisper lurked a haunting choice, one that could twist her fate into something unrecognizable. "Drew!" she shouted again, more determined now. "You have to pull me out. Make your choice." He hesitated, eyes darting, lips trembling as shadows flicked across him like taunting fingers. "I don't know what to do. I'm scared. Don't let fear decide for us." Sarah implored, her heart galloping wildly. "This isn't just about me, it's about us. Time slipped further from their grasp as she fought against the ever-pressing darkness, which pulsed like a heartbeat, hungry for their fear. It felt more alive than ever, more relentless. Drew's face darkened with contemplation, a struggle brewing in his own mind. "Help me." The child echoed again, its tiny voice resonating with a sorrow that shivered through Sarah's core. "You hear her?" Sarah cried, desperation flowing through her words. "If we don't stand against this, we'll be lost forever. We can save her. We have to be brave." But the shadows began to whisper more violently, hissing promises that clawed at their insecurities, twisting the very air around them. "Embrace the darkness," they urged, "or lose everything." Driven by a primal scream of courage, Sarah reached out, focusing every ounce of her will on Drew. "You have to reach for the light. Focus on our way back." Drew grimaced, resolute, anger boiled through him. "I want to let you go. I'll fight." He lunged again, pulling back his other hand, the struggle within him now identifiable. Courage shattered through fear as he seized hold of her wrist, desperate and determined. Just when it felt like hope would slacken, Sarah felt a spark flicker in her palm, a surge of warmth amidst the cold tendrils of darkness. "That's it." She gasped, "Hold on. I can feel it. We're fighting together." The shadows writhed, bristling against their combined strength, but the flicker ignited into a blaze. An ember of light pierced the suffocating shroud, growing, pulsating. It illuminated the child, defining its form against the darkness, which recoiled in utter defeat. "Please." The child screamed, both a plea and a command that in an instinctual act. Sarah let go of her fear and grasped the warmth of the light, letting it envelop them both, rallying every remaining fragment of her soul. "Bring her back." But as the brilliance escaped, illuminating their surroundings, the darkness fought back, spinning like a raging storm, threatening to snuff out their hope. And then, just when it seemed victory was within grasp, Sarah felt something shift in the air, a shift she couldn't identify. "Drew! Hold on!" she yelled, as she braced for the inevitable. As clarity broke through the haze, they saw the child's figure illuminating the shadows, a fragile beacon amidst chaos. But in that moment, just at the cusp of escape, Sarah caught a glimpse of something else emerging from the depths. Not all shadows were retreating. "What is that?" she exclaimed, eyes widening as she recognized the shape forming behind the child's silhouette. Then, it all collapsed into silence. The darkness grew still, suffocating their voices, until a single question echoed louder than the rest: "What happens when you lose hope?" And then, the ground trembled, forming a rift between their reality and the void. What lay in the heart of that darkness? What secrets would unveil once they crossed that line? The moment the ground trembled, it felt as if reality had unraveled. Sarah's heart raced, thumping against her ribs like a wild animal caged within her, desperate to escape. Drew's grip on her tightened as if anchoring her to this world, yet the shadows twisted and whirled, a storm of darkness swirling around them. "What is happening?" Drew shouted, panic rising in his voice. The child's figure flickered like a candle flame in the wind, light wavering against the dark sea that threatened to drown them. Then Sarah spotted it, a monstrous shape looming behind the child, stretching and twisting as if freshly carved from nightmares. An imposing specter horned with hollow eyes, it filled the air with a foreboding chill. The whispers grew louder, now a cacophony of taunts laced with despair. "You should have let go," the shadows hissed. "Now, you will pay the price." "Shut up!" Sarah screamed, fueled by a surge of fury. Memories of laughter, warmth, and every shared moment with Drew flickered like stars in her mind, reminding her to hold on. This was not just about survival, this was about love. The child's voice reached out through the darkness, sweet and haunting. "You have to make a choice, the only way to save us." "Save us?" Sarah spat, driven by dread and disbelief. "You're the one trapped. What do you know about choices?" "Everything," it whispered. "The darkness feeds on fear, on doubt. Your choice makes the chains stronger or weaker." She felt the tendrils of fear try to coil around her again, urging her to succumb, to believe that giving in was the only way out. But in that moment, the flicker of hope ignited again, brighter this time, tethering Sarah to purpose. "Drew," she urged, determination lacing her voice. "We have to push together." He nodded slowly, face tightening as though he was willing this darkness back from his very soul. "You're right. We can't let it take us." But the monstrous figure chuckled, a sound that sent icy shivers dancing down Sarah's spine. "Together?" it roared, a blend of mockery and challenge. "You think that binds you? There's a price when you resist. One must be sacrificed." "Sacrificed?" Sarah echoed, dread pooling in her stomach. This was a sick game, and they were the pawns. She faced Drew, eyes wild. "We want to be the ones sacrificed. We will refuse." Before she could process it, the child lunged forward, light spilling from it like liquid sunshine. "Trust each other," it cried, "or everything will fall apart." And then, with a sweeping motion, the child disappeared into the thickening shadows. It was visceral, a cut through the heart of Sarah's chest that left a raw ache. "Where did it go?" Drew whispered, fear creeping into his voice. The shadows seemed to consume the child's light, dimming their already fragile hope. "Drew, we have to act," she urged desperately. "Focus on the love we have, the light between us. Together we can overpower this darkness." "You're right," he said through tense breaths. He took a deep inhale, his hands squeezing hers. The warmth surged through their link, creating a powerful torrent against the malevolence that surrounded them. "For every moment we've shared," he said, voice steadier, "for every laugh and every whisper we choose to fight." The rift beneath them widened, pulling the earth apart and threatening to claim them. Yet that surge of warmth mirrored their love, blossoming and flaring up around them, defying the shadows. The whispers fell into disarray, fear evident even in their dark tones. "No. You cannot resist." The monstrous figure screeched as the shadows whirled in fury, but they held on, bodies tethered by their combined strength. In that instant of unity, the light enveloped them bright and overwhelming, scattering the shadow like mist before the dawn. Just as dawn breaks through night, they surged forward, the shadows clawing and shrieking as they retreated from the onslaught. They were pushing against an abyss, momentum building as a final surge ignited them forward, but then, from the walls of darkness, a furious howl echoed, reverberating through the air, halting their leap to freedom. In its wake, the figure reformed, its eyes blazing with furious intent. "The price has been paid," it vowed. And in the throes of its fury, a new rift formed, the darkness thickened, spreading an ether of dread, leaving Sarah feeling as if she had stepped into another realm entirely. What did it mean? She gasped, feeling a tremor of uncertainty crawl up her spine, then, just as before, silence blanketed them, leaving their hearts pounding a fearful rhythm. What sacrifice had they made without realizing it? How deep did the darkness go? The shadows twisted and morphed, pulling at the edges of Sarah's mind, making her feel unsteady. The echoes of the howl still vibrated in the air, a dark reminder of what was at stake. "Stay close." Drew's voice broke through her whirlwind of thoughts, but it felt strained, like he was fighting to keep his footing on shifting ground. They clasped hands tighter, their bond a fragile string woven against this consuming darkness. Sarah's pulse raced wildly in her ears, drowning out the whispers that now began to swirl with new urgency. Something changed. It was as if the shadows regrouped and now had a singular purpose, a quest for revenge against them. "Drew, we need to get out of here." "There's no way out," he replied, panic edging his voice. "They're holding us hostage in this nightmare." "No. There has to be something we can do." She searched the dark void around them, desperate for a glimmer of hope or escape. The edges of the rift pulsed with malevolence, a heartbeat that seemed alive with anger. The towering figure loomed closer, its features sharpening into focus, revealing a gnarled smile that mocked their defiance. In your fight for love, it taunted, you've already lost more than you know. Sacrifices were made, and now, the darkness demands a reckoning. A chill raced down Sarah's spine like ice water. What did you take from us? She demanded, trying to rally her fading courage. Stop playing games. The figure's hollow eyes flashed, igniting with flame-like fury. Your innocence, your joy, they've become fuel for my rage. It bellowed, its voice saturated with disdain. With each word, the ethereal landscape shuddered, as if tearing at the seams of reality itself. Drew's breath quickened, warmth draining from his fingers as his grip faltered. We can't give in, Sarah. We have to remember who we are. His face twisted in pain, dread looming larger than before. Remember, she repeated, wrapping the thought around her like armor. Yes, their memories, these were their weapons against the darkness. The laughter, the tenderness of shared moments, the very heart of what had bonded them. But could they harness those memories to light their way? As if responding to her thoughts, a flicker of silver light pierced the blackness, a momentary flash of clarity. Drew! She exclaimed, think of our park nights, the stars, all the times we laid together, feeling the world drift away. Do you remember how you laughed when I tried to make that stupid picnic? He blurted, his eyes brightening. The warmth of nostalgia spread between them, drawing energy from their shared love. Yes. And the time we found that hidden spot by the creek. Those moments were pure light. The monstrous figure recoiled slightly, sensing the swell of their memories merging into something potent. You think nostalgia can save you? It hissed, spitting venom as the shadows loomed larger. We're not done fighting. Sarah shouted, her heart swelling with renewed belief. As Drew's laughter echoed in her mind, the pressure of the darkness began to crack, tiny shards of light piercing through the murky depths. Together. Drew shouted, finding his voice, his courage rekindled. They squeezed each other's hands tightly, pouring every ounce of love, recollection, and dreams into this moment. The shadows writhed, shrieking as the light merged, enveloping them. With each heartbeat, Sarah felt a tide of warmth rise, washing over them, lifting them against the darkness. But as the energy pulsed, the figure roared back, smashing the ground beneath them. You are fools. Do you think you can escape me? I will not let you go. Their footing faltered, and the rift widened again, threatening to consume them as terrifying laughter echoed from within the void. With the last remnants of their combined strength, they jumped not toward safety but into the raw heart of darkness, hoping to shatter it from within. Yet as they dove into that maw of shadows, a chilling realization gripped Sarah's heart. The figure's voice whispered from behind, you were the sacrifice. As the world dissolved around them, she sensed a flicker of light reaching for her, but was it too late? Would they become the essence of this never-ending nightmare? The pulse of dread quickened, leaving her breathless. What horrific truth awaited them as they plummeted into the abyss? What sacrifice would they truly pay? The void swallowed them, darkness tugging viciously at Sarah and Drew as they spiraled deeper into despair. An icy grip clasped around their hearts, squeezing tighter, smothering every flicker of hope. But just when the shadows threatened to drown their cries, something within Sarah ignited a relentless fire fueled by the memories they forged together. Remember. She shouted, her voice breaking through the oppressive silence. Our nights under the stars, every laugh, every moment. We can't let it take that. Images rushed through her mind. Sunlit days at the park, cozy evenings in front of the fireplace, the sweetness of stolen kisses. Each moment a crack of light against the dark, rallying against the consuming void. Drew's grip on her hand tightened. His voice came through, steady and fierce. For every small joy we've shared, there are weapons. Their light against this darkness. Echoes of memories illuminated the encroaching shadows. The laughter they shared became a shield, a burning resolve that pushed back against the malevolence surrounding them. Now. Together. They shouted, as they embraced the memories, pouring every ounce of love into that singular moment. Light burst forth, bright and all-consuming. The monstrous figure roared in defiance, twisting with fury but faltering under the blaze. Shadows recoiled, shrieking as the warmth surged brighter. "Keep going," Sarah urged, heart pounding with purpose. The shadows writhed, bending and shrinking under the power of their combined strength. "We can do this." Drew's eyes ignited with resolve. "Together, we defeat it." As laughter turned to screams, their shared history began to form a bridge through the chaos, illuminating a path forward. The darkness cracked, its grasp loosening, yielding to the persistent power of love. And then, among the swirling chaos, the child's voice returned, clearer than ever. "Help me." It echoed, this time full of desperate hope. The figure howled, the malevolence bending. "You think you can save it? Let go." Its voice twisted with malice, shadows flickering like dying flames. "No!" They screamed, pulling together, pushing against the overwhelming darkness. "We won't let you win." As light burst around them, the shadows began to dissolve into the air, swirling like autumn leaves caught in the wind. The monstrous figure shrieked in agony, the realization settling in. Then, in a surge of brilliance, the laughter returned, sweet and childlike. They reached for the shimmering figure of the child, now standing free of shadow, eyes bright with gratitude. "Thank you," it called, arms outstretched, pulling upon the warmth of faith and love. In that pivotal moment, Sarah and Drew felt themselves lifted, light pouring in like dawn breaking through the darkest night. It consumed them, wrapping them in a cocoon of safety, washing away their fears, a gift, a promise of a brighter tomorrow. As they soared through the remnants of shadow, tearing back into the world, the whispers faded. The forest breathed anew, the cold grip of despair dispelled. They landed in the clearing, breathless yet alive. The cabin stood silent, but a warmth lingered in the air, as if the spirit had finally found peace. "Did we do it?" Drew asked, eyes wide, voice trembling. "Yeah, we did," Sarah replied, staring into the treetops where sunlight streamed through, painting golden rays on their faces. But as they stepped from the unnatural gloom, a nagging sensation tugged at Sarah's heart. "What if it's still out there?" she asked, her voice wavering. Drew shook his head. "Not anymore. We fought against it. We chose love over fear." A light breeze whispered through the trees, a reminder of their strength. They turned to the cabin one last time, holding on to the warmth from their shared battle. The shadows, though haunting, could no longer claim them. As they walked toward the sunlight, arm in arm, laughter spilled from Sarah's lips, freer now than she ever thought possible. "Let us promise to never let fear win again. No matter what." "Agreed," Drew said, squeezing her hand tighter. "Together forever." There was no more shadow, no more darkness, only the flicker of hope at their backs and a bright future stretching out ahead of them. As they stepped deeper into the light, another chapter of darkness was closed, leaving only echoes of laughter and memories to shield against the night. Remember, this is your moment to choose love over fear. You need to subscribe now to stay ahead of the shadows. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this harrowing escape. And if you really want to share in this journey, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how love can conquer darkness.